Yep, we are live. Live입니다. Hello internet, hello world, hello Korea.
Hi everyone.
Blockchainers. We're coming straight from the heart of Seoul, Seoul, Korea, and we are the Blockchainers. We're here to bring you all the latest news with an emphasis on technology about blockchain and cryptocurrency and just some of that good as Korean soul.
Right.
Yeah. 안녕하세요 여러분. 대한민국 블록체인의 가치를 더하는 블록체이너 시은과
영훈입니다.
And today we have a very special guest in the building. On the other side of the world at St. Kitts. Say hello to Korea and the world, Roger.
안녕하세요, Roger입니다. Hello everybody, I'm Roger Veer. Nice to meet you all.
Oh, yeah, wow. Okay, yeah. Now we have 1,600 people watching. This is kind of crazy. But yeah, let's start with the show. Right now, Bitcoin Cash price is going up and down, but we probably won't ask any questions about the price for our first couple of questions. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you discover Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I was the first person in the entire world to start investing in Bitcoin-related startups back in 2011. And I heard about it for the first time on an American radio show. They were talking about it in reference to the Silk Road. And personally, I wasn't interested in drugs at all, but I thought, what kind of money is this that they can use to do that sort of thing? This must be a really interesting form of money. So then I started digging into it and looking into it more. And when I started to understand, put all the pieces together in my mind, I realized that Bitcoin was the best form of money that the world had ever seen up until that point. And I knew people were going to start using it as money because my educational background was both economics and computer science. So I had both pieces of the puzzle to put together to really wrap my mind around why Bitcoin was going to be such an important invention for the world. So my first step was to go out and buy a bunch of Bitcoin, and my next step was to invest in a bunch of Bitcoin-related startups to make Bitcoin more useful in commerce. And I see a lot of people fixating about the price of Bitcoin this or the price of Bitcoin Cash that or the price. But the price is just a side effect of the utility. Anything that's useful and scarce will have a price. And the more useful it is, the higher the price will be. So if you want the price of your Bitcoin Cash or your whatever cryptocurrency to go up, you need to focus on making it more useful. And if it's not more useful to more people around the world, the price isn't going to go up. And the price is simply a side effect.
Okay. We're going to start with a very simple question. What is Bitcoin for you? What characteristics of Bitcoin makes it so attractive?
Sure. So for me, the things that really made me excited and interested in Bitcoin were the fact that it allowed anyone, anywhere, to be able to send and receive any amount of money with anyone else, anywhere in the world, instantly, basically for free. And that's a key point. And there wasn't anything that anybody could do to stop it. You didn't need a bank. You didn't need permission from a government. You didn't need permission from anybody at all. And it worked for everybody everywhere on the planet. And of course, that's the best form of money the world had ever seen up until that point. And so today, not to get too deep into the Bitcoin politics, but Bitcoin Cash still has all of those characteristics and the biggest network effect of the currencies that still have those characteristics, whereas Bitcoin Core no longer has those characteristics. It's incredibly slow and unreliable and expensive and still has a big network effect, but it doesn't have the same characteristics that made Bitcoin a success to begin with, whereas Bitcoin Cash still has the same characteristics that made Bitcoin a success to begin with and has the second biggest network effect, second only to Bitcoin Core itself. But I think we're going to see a real flipping of the entire ecosystem to Bitcoin Cash because it has that big network effect and it still has all the same characteristics that made Bitcoin go from being nothing to the worldwide phenomenon that it is today. So I'm more bullish on Bitcoin Cash than ever before. As you can tell from my shirt.
Yeah, bitch, please.
Bitcoin Cash, please. Please, no profanity on the show, sir.
No, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, there might be, actually, Korea is having a KYC problem because we're not really sure whether it's like elementary school or like junior high school. There's even like rumors that like junior high, middle school, high school kids are trading nowadays in Korea using their parents' account. So it's quite the boom.
Koreans have quite the reputation for being really good when it comes to cyber money and technology. So I wouldn't be too surprised if young people in Korea aren't already using digital currencies, although hopefully they're doing it with their own money and not their parents' money without permission.
Yes, sir. Let's move on to just just some of the recent stuff, fiasco that happened.
Mhm.
So, you know, with the 2x, with the whole block size debate, I think now, yeah, the small blockers and the big blockers are standing at opposite sides. We're like, I don't think people are like necessarily hurling grenades at each other as much as when everybody was just under a single Bitcoin. So, but then my question to you is, you know, the criticism of when the optimal block size is. When do you think, when is enough enough? What is the optimal block size?
We don't know, and nobody knows. The optimal block size is like, what is the optimal price of kimchi? We don't know, and it depends on what restaurant you're at and what location and in what country. And unfortunately, kimchi is a heck of a lot more expensive in St. Kitts than it is in Seoul, Korea. But that's not to say that the price of kimchi is wrong in St. Kitts, or the price of kimchi is correct in Korea. The market is what decides, and at the end of the day, it's the miners that are producing the block space that the public wants to consume. So it's a balancing act between those two things. So there is no right amount of block space to be produced. It's whatever the market decides, just like the market decides the price of kimchi.
Okay. One of the claims made by the big small blockers is that big blockers kind of like make Bitcoin less decentralized. What do you think? What kind of effect does like block size increase has on decentralization? What is your opinion on this? What is like sort of like a trade between the block size increase and decentralization in your opinion?
So the alleged trade-off is that if it becomes more expensive to run a computer that runs a full node, fewer people will run full nodes. And there's some truth to that line of reasoning, but the other side of that coin is that if more people around the world are able to use Bitcoin, that means you'll have more people and more businesses using Bitcoin, which means you have a bigger pool of people to draw from to run full nodes. But at the end of the day, it's not the full nodes that include your transactions in a block. It's the miners that include your transactions in a block. So we want to have as many miners around the world as we can and distribute it around the world. And the goal in and of itself isn't decentralization. Decentralization is simply the tool that we use to achieve this censorship-resistant characteristic that Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash both have. So you don't need an unlimited amount of decentralization. You just need enough to maintain the censorship resistance. And to be honest, I think 10 or 20,000 full nodes around the world is more than enough to have that censorship resistance, as long as there's a bunch of miners around the world as well. I would be much more concerned if all the mining was happening in one specific location in one part of the world. But as long as we have lots of mining around the world, I'm not worried about it as well. And then there's another benefit that mass adoption brings, is you have more censorship resistance that way. If everybody around the world is using Bitcoin or cryptocurrency to buy their coffee and their baby diapers and Amazon and all that sort of stuff and their kimchi, if governments go and try and crack down on it and say this is something bad that people shouldn't be using, they'll say, no, wait a minute, I'm using that to buy my coffee and my kimchi in the morning. Of course it's not bad. And so you have additional censorship resistance protection by having mass adoption. If we have billions of people around the world using Bitcoin, then it makes it much more difficult for governments to clamp down on and control. And I think most people don't want to have their currency clamped down on and controlled by governments.
But don't you think also that the market in some ways is responding to just unavailability of your regular everyday user to purchase a Bitcoin ASIC? I mean, we've recently had like projects like Bitcoin Gold get the attention when they're talking about GPU mining is where it's at. We're going to decentralize mining, or even projects like Vercoin, which get the attention because they're pushing for that GPU decentralized mining. So for the average user, it seems much more accessible than to run like a Bitcoin mining farm. So do you think like Bitcoin mining centralization, especially in regards to ASIC, things are threat?
So the audio cut out a little bit at the very end there, but I think the question was, what do I think about mining centralization in regards to ASICs versus GPUs?
Yes, that is correct.
And I don't think that ASIC-based mining is that centralized at this point. I mean, there's miners in socialist Venezuela. There's miners in Canada. There's miners in China. I suspect that there's ASIC miners in Korea as well. There's miners in Japan. They're all over the world. Canada, USA, Mexico, and you take it. Take your pick. There's Bitcoin miners around the world at this point. So I don't see there being a huge advantage when it comes to GPUs. And these same mining farms are now setting up big giant GPU mining farms as well that are run in the same manner and shape that the ASIC mining farms are. And one additional downside of CPU or GPU based mining is that then you have to worry about giant botnets that have, commandeered control of a whole bunch of people's computers without their permission. That's a problem too that you don't have with ASIC based mining equipment. You don't have to worry about the botnets having giant influence over a coin.
Yeah, I forgot that used to be a problem a couple years ago when ASICs were just rolling out, right? But what about like, I guess a criticism that someone can make on BCH is you guys have that ridiculous anonymous miner who we don't know whether it's a single entity. We don't know if it's a couple miners colluding. Do you think that will be solved over time?
The more popular Bitcoin Cash becomes, the more people will want to mine it. Currently, it's about 10% more profitable to mine than Bitcoin Core. So that means it's going to attract more and more miners over time. And it's growing by leaps and bounds. I went to bed last night and the price was around $1,200. And now I woke up this morning and the price is like $1,500. I think that's a sign of the fact that at the moment people are speculating on the fact that Bitcoin Cash is going to become even more useful in commerce in the very near future. So we just saw the Bitcoin.com wallet launch full support for Bitcoin Cash a few days ago. Blockchain.info has announced that by the end of this year, they'll have full support for Bitcoin Cash. Coinbase has announced that they have full support for Bitcoin Cash coming. And I'm sure more and more businesses around the world. When you compare Bitcoin Cash with Bitcoin Core is incredibly expensive, slow, and unreliable. Bitcoin Cash is super cheap to use, super fast, and super reliable. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind which one people are going to use in commerce. And as more and more people start to use Bitcoin Cash in commerce, more and more miners around the world are going to be using it.
Okay. No. I don't know that much about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so another thing, since you mentioned the wallet, what's going on with that wallet fiasco? A lot of people are saying that you completely tricked people on the App Store and you put up the Bitcoin.com wallet and it's actually a BCH wallet and people are like really angry and there seems to be a lot of Twitter bickering. What really went down from your perspective?
From my perspective, it's a bunch of people that either didn't bother to install the wallet and actually look at it, or they're people that are intentionally trying to cause trouble on the internet. If you install the Bitcoin.com wallet, which I invite everyone listening to do, you'll see very, very clearly that there's a BCH wallet and a BTC wallet. They're labeled very clearly. They have different colors. There's no confusion at all, other than for anybody who wants to be intentionally confused or wants to pretend that they're confused. So it's a bunch of nonsense. And I just was checking right before the show this morning. We don't have Korean language support yet, but I'll work on having that by this time next week. And in fact, if any of the people that are listening to this want to help out with that, we're happy to pay you in Bitcoin Cash. You can email me, roger@bitcoin.com, and we'll get a Korean language version of the app available hopefully by this time next week.
That sounds awesome. Why do you think right now, you said that Bitcoin Cash is more profitable to mine right now at approximately 10% of BTC. Why do you think that's the case?
It has to do with the difficulty of the mining and then the price of the Bitcoin Cash itself. And so the Bitcoin mining difficulty adjustment is a bit different on Bitcoin Cash than it is on Bitcoin Core. So as the price of Bitcoin Cash goes up, if it going up faster than the price of Bitcoin Core, then it becomes more profitable for people to mine. So more miners will mine it, and you'll have more miners around the world mining it, which means it's more secure and more trustworthy. And if it's more secure and more trustworthy, more people are going to start using it and trusting it. And it's this reoccurring virtuous cycle of gaining more and more momentum.
All right, I'm just going to go for the jugular then, because there are rumors floating around about there was like the whole Operation Dragon Slayer thing, which is kind of funny because it was done on breaking down Bitcoin, the show, which is talking more about the tech of Bitcoin. But other than that, like people are saying that a lot of BTC people who previously mined BCH are now mining BTC, and they're planning to do a flippening, another like run-up attack using hash rate this weekend. What do you think about this? Is this just a rumor?
Yeah, I wonder the same thing as well. But at the end of the day, this wouldn't have happened if the core people had been willing to allow Bitcoin to continue to be useful in commerce. But the part that I used to be a big core supporter and think, oh, thank God we have all these, wonderful people that are so smart about this. But it turns out those Bitcoin Core people that I thought were so smart know absolutely nothing about economics and the economic reasons that Bitcoin became a success. And so those people actively tried to make Bitcoin have high fees. They actively tried to make Bitcoin have unreliable transactions. Well, guess what? If something's expensive and unreliable, people are going to look for an alternative, and that alternative is Bitcoin Cash. So if the miners do initiate some sort of flippening where they move all their hash rate from Bitcoin back to Bitcoin Cash right after the next difficulty adjustment, and they sell a bunch of their Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash, that's just the market at work at that point. It's not an attack on Bitcoin. It's the market succeeding because it's creating something that's even more useful for people to use in commerce. So I've already sold the majority of my own Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash because it's going to be, and already is, more useful in commerce. And if something isn't useful, it's not going to have a price. And Bitcoin's utility has been incredibly damaged by these Blockstream and Bitcoin Core supporters. And if you ask most of them that still support these people, they hardly ever actually use Bitcoin. They rarely make a transaction in Bitcoin. And if you ask the Bitcoin Cash supporters, these are people that use Bitcoin often, and they use it for payments often, and they can see Bitcoin Cash costs less than a penny to send somebody money. Bitcoin Core costs dollars or tens of dollars to send it, and you have no idea when your transaction is going to get confirmed. So it's very, very clear. You have people that use Bitcoin support Bitcoin Cash, and people who don't really use it support Bitcoin Core. That's the general. If I were to draw some generalities, that's what I've seen to or found to be my experience there.
Yeah, I think your vision of Bitcoin is that Bitcoin that can be used in everyday life when you're buying coffee or say another thing. So I just want to know what you think about the layer 2 solutions, such as like Lightning Network. Does it necessary, or just block size increase will be sufficient for accommodating those like huge volume of transactions?
I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with layer 2 technologies. I'm excited and interested in layer 2 technologies. It's worth pointing out that the small block size on Bitcoin Core have broken all sorts of layer 2 technologies that previously were working and working well. And I guess my biggest gripe on that front is we had layer 1 working incredibly well, and it grew Bitcoin from nothing to this worldwide phenomenon that it is today. Maybe layer 2 stuff will work awesome and be fantastic, but you don't intentionally break layer 1 that we know works incredibly well in order to force people onto layer 2 that might possibly work, but is untested and we don't know yet. But that's exactly what these Bitcoin Core supporters have been advocating doing. They've been advocating breaking something we know works for sure in order to get people to use something that might possibly work. And with a $100 billion market cap, what an incredibly foolish, dangerous, reckless thing for them to do. If something's working and working well, don't break it. But unfortunately, they succeeded in breaking Bitcoin, and that's why I support Bitcoin Cash now.
So can you elaborate more on Bitcoin Core breaking Bitcoin? So is it like they're not increasing the block size, or is it they're implementing like SegWit? What specifically do you mean when you say they are breaking like things that are working fine?
So I've been pitching Bitcoin to the world for about 7 years, and my pitch has always been that you can send and receive any amount of money with anyone, anywhere in the world, instantly and basically for free, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. And the two parts that Bitcoin Core has broken is the instantly part, because they've come up with this replace by fee policy, which makes zero confirmation transactions much, much, much more risky to accept, or much more dangerous for merchants to accept. And then the basically free part, for the first half of my time that I was involved in Bitcoin, up until maybe 2013-ish, you could send almost all of your Bitcoin transactions for free if the Bitcoins had been sitting at an address for long enough. Whereas now, it's common for me with my Bitcoin.com business, we have to pay $1,000 in fees for some transactions, where we have a bunch of customers paid us each, $20, and then we go and move it to an exchange. It's $20 per input. If we have 100 inputs, that's $2,000 in fees when the network's really congested. And why would I use that when I can do the same thing with Bitcoin Cash and it costs a couple of pennies? Or for example, our mining pool, we make the daily payouts to all the people mining on our pool. The fee for the Bitcoin payouts is around $500 a day, whereas the fee for the Bitcoin Cash payouts are like 20 cents. It's clear which one of those two are more useful. But it would be one thing if that just happened on accident, but that was an intentional design goal of the Bitcoin Core supporters. They openly say they want Bitcoin fees to be high. They openly say they want Bitcoin blocks to be full. And if the Bitcoin blocks are full, that means that you have unreliable transactions as well. So they've intentionally created high fees and unreliable transactions. Well, when things are expensive and unreliable, people look for alternatives. And that main alternative at this point is Bitcoin Cash. But the real winners are all the altcoins. We've seen the altcoins just explode in popularity once the blocks became full on Bitcoin, whereas up to that point, Bitcoin had like 90% market share.
Okay, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible here because I really want to be politically neutral here. So when you say that the Bitcoin Core supporters, they say they want intentionally high fees, is it really true? Like, did they really say that they want intentionally high fees?
Yes, which is stunning because I think most people don't realize that they would say such a thing. But if you go and read their own words, and I put together a whole 30-minute video giving a presentation with quotes from these core developers. I have quotes from Greg Maxwell. I have quotes from a whole bunch of core developers with them openly saying that they want high fees and full blocks and the things, the problems that they cause. So for me, that was the real revelation in my point when I realized that these people actually want Bitcoin to have high fees and want Bitcoin to have full blocks, which is the exact opposite thing that Bitcoin has. We want Bitcoin to have lots of room in the blocks and very low fees, which means the transactions will go through quickly and be low cost. So if you go on YouTube after you're done watching this thing and you Google Roger Ver on the economic code of Bitcoin, I put a whole presentation together with actual quotes from these people, and I think it'll stun anybody that wants Bitcoin to be fast, cheap, and reliable, because these people openly want Bitcoin to be slow, expensive, and unreliable. And I have the exact quotes with references cited to the exact links where these people said that, so you can see for yourself.
Okay, it's just like the reason I'm asking this question is like it's quite unimaginable for people to like the people if people really do care about Bitcoin and the future of it, then like they don't. It's quite natural that like they don't want high fees. So I mean, if you can send me the source like where I can independently verify that they can like they actually said these things, I mean it's gonna be great. But like we can check it afterward probably, right?
Yeah, and if you visit rogerver.com, I have the entire PDF slide presentation available on there as well, where you can see the exact quotes with the links, and I'll gladly email it to you after we're done on the call here as well. And it sounds like if you're shocked and opposed by people wanting Bitcoin to be expensive and have full blocks and be unreliable because of it, it sounds like Bitcoin Cash is the right coin for you. And I'll point out also, anybody that was holding Bitcoin on August 1st instantly became a Bitcoin Cash holder as well. And it's important to differentiate between an actual Bitcoin wallet where you're holding the Bitcoins yourself and a Bitcoin bank in which you're trusting some company to hold the Bitcoins for you. And I would urge everybody to use an actual Bitcoin wallet in which you're holding the Bitcoins yourself, because then you have access to your Bitcoin and your Bitcoin Cash right away from day one.
Yeah, I tend to give people like the benefit of the doubt. So I think it depends on like what the ideal money you think is. I mean, in order to prepare for this interview, I looked at all of your previous interviews, and I really do think that you do believe that mass adoption, like timely mass adoption, is the way to go, especially when you want to secure liberty and censorship resistance for everyone in the different parts of the globe. Is that a correct estimation?
Yeah, that's incredibly important. If Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are only used by a few thousand or a few million even people around the entire planet, it makes it very, very easy for governments to demonize them. Whereas if we can get house moms buying their baby formula in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, how can a politician demonize that? I mean, everybody loves babies. So, or get people buying their pet food, right? Everybody loves puppies and kittens. If we get people buying their pet food and baby formula and old age medicine in cryptocurrencies, it's too late for the government to ban them. And slowing down adoption gives the politicians time to catch up and realize what's happening, because this is a wonderful, wonderfully liberating tool for everybody on the planet that empowers everybody to have more control, excuse me, over their own lives. Politicians don't like people having control over their own lives. So if you like people having control of their own lives, you should want to see the adoption of cryptocurrencies happen as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah, so help us understand a little bit here, because I know, like, a lot of people have said, especially during the SegWit thing, people have said, even the big blockers recognize that transaction malleability can be a problem into the future, but it wasn't that they were against SegWit, but that they were more against anti-core. And also there were stories about where, you know, like I know that you were part of BTC, Bitcoin.com. Bitcoin.com. I know you guys were part of the signers of the New York Agreement. So you did support SegWit 2x, but you didn't support it after, you know, after it just it was canceled. So what's your stance? Do you support SegWit? Do you not support SegWit? Did you support SegWit 2x? Did you not support SegWit 2x?
So there's a couple of questions packed in there. So one point I'd like to make is that we're not opposed to core, Bitcoin Core. We're opposed to Bitcoin Core's policies. The policies are stupid, and I'm opposed to stupid policies. If your policy is to intentionally make Bitcoin slow, expensive, and unreliable, I'm opposed to those policies. I don't think that those people are intentionally bad people. I think that they just don't have the right economic understanding to realize what makes Bitcoin a success. And we know what makes Bitcoin a success. We have the empirical evidence of years and years of adoption, and those were the things that made Bitcoin a success were low fees and fast, reliable transactions. And if you start to break those things, Bitcoin's success is much, much, much less likely to continue. And that's what Bitcoin Core has been advocating. So I've been opposed to Bitcoin Core's policies in regards to that. In regards to transaction malleability and SegWit, again, it's the exact same story. We have, you know, an 8-year track record of Bitcoin not having SegWit and not having a fix for this transaction malleability issue, yet it still managed to grow from nothing to being this worldwide phenomenon that it is today. Maybe SegWit's a good idea, maybe it's not. I don't actually have that strong of an opinion on it, to be honest. But it certainly isn't urgent because we had 8 years of Bitcoin without SegWit and it grew into a worldwide phenomenon without it. So we should focus on the things that are urgent for Bitcoin, which are fixing the high fees and the unreliable confirmation times for transactions. Those are what we need to keep in place in order for Bitcoin to continue on this trajectory that it's been on. If something's not broken, don't try and fix it. And unfortunately, that's exactly what the Blockstream Core group of supporters have tried to do. They've openly said they want Bitcoin to have the exact opposite policies that it used to have that led to Bitcoin's original success. Bitcoin used to be fast, cheap, and reliable. Bitcoin Core wants to be slow, expensive, and unreliable. That's kryptonite to the adoption of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, but one of the criticisms against the Bitcoin Cash is the lack of developer community. Is that so? Who are the core developers and why are they qualified? Yeah, why are they qualified?
So the Bitcoin Core developers obviously are not qualified. They've destroyed Bitcoin. Bitcoin went from having basically 100% market share now down to around 50% market share, and the entire ecosystem is on the verge of migrating away from Bitcoin Core completely to things like Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum and Dash and all these other ones. That's empirical proof that the Bitcoin Core team was incredibly incompetent and they shouldn't have been in charge of Bitcoin. And the only way they managed to keep their control of Bitcoin was through, and maybe a lot of the Korean viewers won't know this, but the most popular discussion platforms in English are completely censored and completely controlled by Bitcoin Core. For example, when we're done recording this video, if we try to post this video on our Bitcoin, the post will literally be deleted. So a bunch of these core supporters that claim Bitcoin is supposed to be censorship resistant money are busy on this giant censorship campaign to delete anybody posting anything that's opposed to Core's roadmap. And if you believe Bitcoin is supposed to be censorship resistant money, you shouldn't support a bunch of people that are engaging in censorship to promote it. And that's exactly what we have with the Bitcoin Core team. I'm sure they're good computer scientists and you know, capable cryptographers, but you have to understand the economic reasons that Bitcoin came to be a success. And if you're doing your computer science work and your cryptography work without understanding the economics, it doesn't matter how good of a cryptographer or how good of a programmer you are if you're coding with the wrong goals in mind in the end there. And so and they also like to discount anybody that's not part of their little club, and they say, oh, they're not a real developer. Bitcoin Cash has multiple development teams with multiple people that are incredibly smart. So I'm not worried about it at all. So the core team has proven that they shouldn't have been trusted with Bitcoin by the fact that it's now at around 50% market share, down from 100%. And the fact that companies like Bitcoin.com are no longer supporting Bitcoin Core. The world's first investor in Bitcoin startups is now not supporting their roadmap. And that's a sign. If you go and read the original white paper that was on Bitcoin.org, and if you read the original Bitcoin.org website, the Bitcoin that's described on that website doesn't resemble the Bitcoin that Bitcoin Core is trying to present to the world today at all. So they've built something completely different than what was described in the original white paper and on the original website that led to Bitcoin becoming a worldwide phenomenon. So sorry for a long rant, but the Bitcoin Core team has proven themselves to be incompetent based on the market share that Bitcoin has today and the fact that businesses are moving away from them as quickly as they can.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think we could take that answer. It was just kind of, I do agree that, like, I mean, in some ways, I do agree that Bitcoin Core has been extremely conservative when it did come to development.
So I would disagree with that too. And if I can jump in here. So for the entire history of Bitcoin up until about a year ago, Bitcoin never, ever, ever had full blocks. And there was no cryptocurrency in the entire world that ever had full blocks. And Bitcoin Core intentionally experimented on Bitcoin to make it the first cryptocurrency in the history of the world to have full blocks. And if you want to do an experiment like that, you should do it on a cryptocurrency that's not the biggest one and not the most important one and not the one with the most widespread use around the world. So that was an incredibly reckless, dangerous thing for Bitcoin Core to do, the exact opposite of conservative. If you want to try a new experiment of having a cryptocurrency with full blocks, try on a cryptocurrency that's not important and isn't being used by millions of people around the world in commerce. So that was incredibly reckless on their part to do that and incredibly dangerous. And we've seen the results. Bitcoin's market share went from almost 100% down to around 50% or maybe even less today. I haven't checked since I woke up this morning.
Yeah, I will say, I will agree with you on that. Like, all the infighting, all the toxicity, that has definitely driven Bitcoin's market cap down, as well as it led a lot of developers who were originally in Bitcoin to go and either start their own chains or participate in a project for a different coin altogether.
Yeah, okay. And it's worth pointing out, I guess, the brain drain that Bitcoin has been experiencing thanks to the censorship and the toxic environment that the censorship has caused. Lots and lots of these smart people are now going to other coins, some to Bitcoin Cash, lots to Ethereum. I was just at the Ethereum DevCon conference in Mexico a couple of weeks ago, and almost everybody there was a former Bitcoin supporter. And they left Bitcoin when Bitcoin Core took over and started the censorship and started down this roadmap of intentionally restricting Bitcoin from being able to grow to be a currency for the entire world. So the brain drain caused by Bitcoin Core is another example of just how much they've damaged Bitcoin.
All right. So for Bitcoin Cash, I know you guys have the Accept Bitcoin Cash initiative, correct? And
yeah, a group of just people in the community have started that initiative. So I found out about it after they had already started it. And Bitcoin Cash really reminds me of Bitcoin in the early days, where you have people that just are going out there and getting things done because they believe in it and they like it and they love it. And the people that used to have that mentality, they used to be doing that for Bitcoin, but they've left Bitcoin due to Bitcoin Core's censorship and just toxic environment of personal attacks on anybody that opposes their roadmap. And it's not that I'm attacking them, I'm attacking their misguided ideas, and I want to attack their misguided ideas with logic and reason. And what are they so afraid of? Why do they have to censor everything? If their ideas are strong, they should allow free and vigorous debate about it. But instead, they're censoring every media outlet that they can get control of.
Yeah, but let me ask a question from like a different way, because in some ways, I mean, you'll agree that the true value of Bitcoin Cash, at least according to a lot of the visions that you think, is consumer adoption, right? So in some ways, if you aren't able to onboard commerce via the Accept Bitcoin Cash initiative and increase just the number of transactions transaction for daily, everyday things, wouldn't that mean that Bitcoin Cash would that mean that Bitcoin Cash has failed in its vision? Because so far I haven't really seen like a roadmap on how Bitcoin Cash might be onboarding a lot of different merchants or different people for commerce. Is there a roadmap on it?
So there isn't one centralized roadmap, but I'm very, very, very confident of the future adoption of Bitcoin Cash in commerce. We've already seen Coinbase, which is one of the biggest merchant processors in the entire world, announced they have full support for Bitcoin Cash coming. I'm sure a bunch of the other biggest merchant processors around the world, they've hinted, BitPay, for example, has hinted that Bitcoin Cash's full support is coming. And to be honest, I would be absolutely shocked if they didn't have full support for Bitcoin Cash. I've met with some Korean companies as well recently that are very interested in Bitcoin Cash. So when you have any businessman with any common sense and you have Bitcoin Core that's super expensive and slow and unreliable, and you have Bitcoin Cash that's super cheap, fast, and reliable, there's absolutely no question as to which one they're going to be building their infrastructure on. And it takes a little bit of time. Remember, Bitcoin Cash just forked away, less than 4 months ago. So it takes a little bit of time to build that infrastructure, but the infrastructure is coming fast and furious. And I think by this time next year, we'll see widespread adoption of Bitcoin Cash. And at that point, I think it's much more likely than not that Bitcoin Cash will have surpassed Bitcoin Core in terms of market share and adoption and hash rate and everything else. I would be really, really surprised if that hasn't happened by this time next year. And to be honest, I think there's a good chance it'll happen significantly sooner than that.
Yes, I think I'm actually on the core side a bit. So I mean, I really do think that I'm not just attacking you, right? I just really think that the core has very talented developers, but I also believe that they actually do adopt really cautious approach to like scaling Bitcoin. So they want to test out the second layer solution first, whether it works fine or not. And we are not actually sure about the relationship between the block size increase and its effect on decentralization. So I want to see more like all those like Bitcoin.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Do you think it was conservative and cautious to allow Bitcoin to become the first cryptocurrency in the entire world to have its blocks become full and its network become congested? Is that conservative and cautious to you?
For me, I think there's a trade-off between block size increase and decentralization, and it has not been proven before. So I think if you increase the block size like so rapidly, that might like reduce the all the benefit of decentralization. Maybe not, but like it hasn't been like tested out or it hasn't been openly discussed enough. So I think that's the area I want to be conservative, and I think that's the area where the core developers are conservative. What do you think about this?
So I guess I'd like to point out that when Bitcoin first started, the blocks were maybe 1 kilobyte or 5 kilobytes. And then they grew to 10 kilobytes as more people started to use Bitcoin. And then they grew to 100 kilobytes as more people started to use Bitcoin. And then half a megabyte, and then 3/4 of a megabyte. And then finally the blocks became 1 megabyte. And that took about 8 years for that to happen. And the next step would be for the blocks to become 1.1 megabyte as more people start to use it. And then 1.2 megabytes, then 1.5 megabytes. And then someday 2 megabytes, someday 10 megabytes, someday 50 megabytes, and someday way into the future, maybe a terabyte per block. And today that's huge, but in another couple of decades that won't be huge. I remember, I was running a bulletin board system back in the late 90s. It took, I think, 8 minutes to download a 1 megabyte file back then, right? It took forever. Whereas now to download every single web page you load is more than a megabyte at this point. So today, 1 gigabyte or 1 terabyte block does seem huge, but a 2 megabyte block isn't huge, and a 2 megabyte block today will be even smaller a year or two from now. So I think just letting the blocks continue to get bigger as more and more people start to use Bitcoin is the safe conservative approach, because we had an 8-year track record of doing exactly that. And to change away from the 8-year track record that we had, that we knew worked incredibly well because it grew Bitcoin from nothing into a worldwide phenomenon, deviating from that is the dangerous, reckless thing to do. I think if we have a path that had worked for 8 years and worked really well, stay on that same path.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you as well, but like I think it's good for us to test out both ways. So we actually don't know how the trade-off between block size increase and the decentralization. So I think it's always good to like test out both ways, and if it works, fine. I mean, whichever works better, I think we can adopt that.
And I'm just fine with layer 2 technologies, but my point is don't break layer 1 in order to force people onto layer 2. And Bitcoin Core has intentionally broken layer 1, that we have the 8-year track record knowing that it works for sure and works incredibly well. They've broken that layer 1, and layer 2 isn't ready yet. Layer 2 doesn't work. Nobody's using layer 2 in commerce. And so they've broken the thing that does work in an attempt to create something that might maybe someday work, but doesn't work yet. And by their own estimates, they're still 1.5 years away from it working. And they've been saying it's 1.5 years away for years now. So for me as a large Bitcoin holder and as the owner of Bitcoin.com, that's really, really frustrating and sad for me, because they've broken this thing that I love and have devoted a huge part of my life to promoting. But thankfully the same spirit and the same characteristics that made Bitcoin a success are alive and well in the form of Bitcoin Cash. And that's why I'm doing all of Bitcoin.com in my own time and effort to promoting Bitcoin Cash, because it's using the same formula that led to Bitcoin's original success. And Bitcoin Core has deviated from that formula. And it sounded like you were really surprised a few minutes ago when I said the core developers openly say they want high fees and unreliable transactions. I will gladly email you their own list of quotes with them saying those exact things. And I think your eyes will really be opened, and you'll be surprised when you see it in their own words saying that they want the exact things that are detrimental to Bitcoin adoption.
I think from somebody that's standing outside, like somebody who might not be interested in Bitcoin at all, and in some ways, like, yeah, there's the technical aspect and there's the political aspect. But I think another aspect that we haven't talked about yet, other than the economics and the technology, the development, is there's the aspect of brand, right? Bitcoin has a huge brand power because it was the first mover and because it is the biggest. It was the first cryptocurrency ever to that's the father, that's the grandfather, that's where everybody comes from. So when it comes to brand, and this again kind of hints back at your wallet, at the wallet thing. Do you think when it comes to the Bitcoin brand, I'm almost inclined to think that people believe Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash are a zero-sum game. How are your thoughts on this?
I don't think it's a zero-sum game. There's already, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 different Bitcoins. There's Bitcoin Core, there's Bitcoin Cash, there's Bitcoin Black, there's Bitcoin Dark, there's Bitcoin Script, there's a whole bunch of different Bitcoins. The only reason Bitcoin Cash is getting so much attention is because it's the one that most closely resembles the Bitcoin described in the original Bitcoin white paper, described on the original Bitcoin.org website, and it most closely resembles the Bitcoin that led to Bitcoin being this worldwide success that it is today. So I'll say it openly and clearly, I think that Bitcoin Cash is the one that deserves the name recognition as Bitcoin, because Bitcoin Core's version of Bitcoin doesn't match the Bitcoin that was described on Bitcoin.org, created by Satoshi, or in the Bitcoin white paper. Bitcoin Cash does match that. So in my book, Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I think you envision the future where the Bitcoin Cash is like widely used across the globe. What is do you have like any specific like scalability roadmap in mind? What kind of like technologies will be suitable for Bitcoin Cash and stuff?
Yeah. So one of my first questions when I first heard about Bitcoin was, well, can this scale so that everybody can use it? And I was very skeptical and cautious about that. So I went and spent time reading the Bitcoin.org website and reading their wiki, and they had a bunch of questions about scalability. And if you read it and look at it, it's very, very clear that Bitcoin can scale on-chain simply by increasing the block size to allow every single human being on the planet to use it in commerce. That's not a problem. That's not a bottleneck. Bitcoin can do that. And on top of that, we can build all sorts of layer 2 technologies as well on top of it. So there's no problem there. But instead, Bitcoin Core have completely veered Bitcoin's roadmap off of becoming a worldwide peer-to-peer cash system into some sort of settlement layer. And if they want to build a settlement layer, that's fine, but they shouldn't have hijacked Bitcoin to do that, which is unfortunately what they've managed to do through a giant censorship and propaganda campaign and personal attacks on myself and other people that support Bitcoin. So that sort of behavior shouldn't be tolerated. It's absolutely unacceptable for any professional person to engage in that sort of thing. Censorship is the tools of government. Censorship and propaganda are what governments do, and that's what us as Bitcoiners should be opposed to. Yet these Bitcoin Core supporters are engaging in that exact same sort of thing, the censorship and propaganda. Well, I'm not interested in engaging in censorship and propaganda. They claim that I've been paying millions of dollars, or they've been claiming that I've been paying all sorts of money for social media astroturfing. I've never paid a single penny for anything like that, ever. It's an absolute lie, and they say it over and over and over again. And just because they say it over and over and over again doesn't make it true. It's not true, and they're lying about it. When we don't know who's been paying for it, but other people have been caught red-handed with posting with I don't know, farmed accounts saying anti-Bitcoin Cash and anti-Bitcoin Unlimited things. We don't know. It could have been a false flag attack, or it could have been core people actually paying for it. But it certainly wasn't me. I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, great. I want to ask you about regulation, because Korea recently had their ICO ban, and they're kind of planning on thinking about how to regulate cryptocurrencies. And in a past interview, you've mentioned there being a difference between government regulation and market regulation when it comes to cryptocurrency. Can you kind of explain for the audience what you think the differences between those two are, and which one you think is more appropriate, or which is a better way to regulate cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to take a step back and think about, when you say the word regulation in reference to government laws, let's talk about exactly what that means in plain English. And what a government regulation is it's a bunch of people, and in your case, a bunch of people in Seoul at I think the Blue House or wherever it is there. It's a bunch of people who you guys have never met and don't know you, and they're telling you what you can and can't do with your own money. And if you disobey them, they will hurt you. And to any normal person, if you stop and think for a minute, why should a bunch of strangers get to tell you what you can or can't do with your own money? And a bunch of those strangers, not only are they trying to tell you, but they'll hurt you, and they'll send you to jail if you disobey them by using your own money in a way that they don't approve of. That's crazy. If it was anybody other than a government person sending you threatening letters in the mail, or setting up a threatening website saying that they're going to hurt you if you spend your money in a certain way, you would know that they're a psychopath and that they're bad people. But suddenly, when they put on a government uniform and work in a building with a flag out in front, people they don't see it the same way and they give it a pass. But I don't think it is any different. So it's just simply a bunch of strangers telling other people what they can or can't do with their own money. Bitcoin was designed to make those people irrelevant, so that people can have complete control of their own money. And if you want to invest in a risky ICO, it's your money to do it with. You should be careful with your money, but you should have the freedom to invest in whatever it is you want to invest on the internet. And if you want to solicit other people to invest in your new business on the internet, you should be free to do that as well. There shouldn't be some small group of people that boss everybody else around with threats of violence, telling them what they can or can't do with their own money. So, and in the market, businesses grow big and become successful by giving their consumers a product that they want and a product that they like. That's the real regulation at the end of the day that's successful and that works. That's what I want to see more of. I want to see more regulation from the market, and less regulation from strangers that I've never met threatening me with violence if I don't obey them.
I want to briefly mention about the governance system in the blockchain space. Apparently, the Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash has serious sort of differences in opinion, and they're gonna kind of get split. So same thing, I think same thing can also happen to Bitcoin Cash as well. What do you think is the ideal form of governance for the crypto community, cryptocurrency, sort of like the ecosystem? So what is the best way to resolve conflict?
I don't know is the answer, but I think we have 1,000 different cryptocurrencies at this point, and they're trying at least hundreds of different forms of governance, and eventually the market's going to decide which one of those is the most effective. So maybe it's a system like Bitcoin Core. I don't think it is. Maybe it's a system like Ethereum, or maybe it's like Bitcoin Cash, or Dash has made a lot of interesting innovations in that front. So I don't know what the best form is, and it's certainly not my place to come and say, this is the best form and everybody needs to do this. I can argue and persuade people and say, hey, I like Bitcoin Cash's form of governance, or I like Dash, or I like Ethereum. I can persuade them, but it's not my place to come and say, this is the one we're all going to use, and we're going to censor anybody's opinion that is different from that, which unfortunately is exactly what Bitcoin Core has managed to do on the English-speaking communication platforms that they control. They will literally delete any post that's in opposition to their plan for the governance of Bitcoin.
Yeah, let's have a change of pace. Hey, Roger, when are you coming to Korea? We'd really like to see you in person.
Yeah, I come to Korea fairly often. So I'm in the Caribbean right now, which is the far, far opposite of the world. But maybe in the springtime I can come again. I was actually just in Korea about a month ago, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to meet you guys at that point. But I'd love to come and see you guys in person. And my favorite food in the entire world is Korean food. I have samgyeopsal as often as I can. I absolutely love it. So I'll be back in Korea, I'm sure, at some point next year.
Do you have any reasoning on why Bitcoin Cash pumped last week? Is it, some people speculate as market manipulation, but I mean, do you have any insight into the sudden rise of Bitcoin Cash?
So I bought a lot of Bitcoin Cash with my own money, but that wasn't the only part of the pump. Most of the volume seems to have come from Korea. So I would love to hear you guys. Why do you think so many Koreans are liking Bitcoin Cash?
I don't know if I think people like Bitcoin Cash because I mean, first of all, the brand value, and then it just carries like the whole Bitcoin thing. I mean, I've talked about people who bought Ethereum Classic. I asked them like, why'd you buy Ethereum Classic during the May run up? And their whole thing was, well, it's just a cheaper Ethereum, so I bought it. I think that's the first thing. And then second of all, when it comes to exchange centralization, I think Korea has the biggest exchange centralization in the world. So you had you kind of had a Mt. Gox. In my opinion, we kind of had a Mt. Gox 2.0.
Yeah. For me, I think there are a lot of speculators, apparently, to be honest. Like, and I just want to know, like, and I think the price are sort of like, in some sense, they're artificially propped up by the speculation. What do you think about speculators and like too much speculation in the cryptocurrency area in general?
I think speculation is a good thing. Speculators and traders tone down the market volatility as a whole. So the more people that speculate on things, that's just fine with me. I have no problem with that. And I have one other comment with a question for you guys, actually, in regards to Korea and Bitcoin Cash. So it just occurred to me, when I was in Korea, I saw a friend of mine who I've been friends with, I don't know, 10 years plus now at this point, who I've been trying to tell about Bitcoin for 8 years. And she never had any interest at all and didn't care about it at all and wouldn't ever let me pay her back on anything in Bitcoin and just didn't want anything to do with Bitcoin. But on this most recent trip to Korea, I told her about Bitcoin Cash. And she said, Bitcoin Cash? It's cash? And suddenly she was interested in Bitcoin Cash because she never viewed Bitcoin as being money before. But now that there's this new name of Bitcoin Cash, suddenly she was willing to set up a wallet and she let me pay her some money in Bitcoin Cash. And suddenly it was a whole new world for her. So is that, do you think any of that's playing part in Korean culture, or is the Bitcoin Cash better branding for Bitcoin in Korea? Or any thoughts on that front?
Yeah, it might be Bitcoin Cash, but another thing might be our Koreans don't use Google. We actually use this website called Naver, which is it's not a search engine. It's a centralized curation engine. And so what happens is most people get their news from very similar sources, and it could be distorted and heavily censored. But nonetheless, if you have something, if you have people interested in one thing, it'll get the attention of the whole entire nation. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, cryptocurrency, that is not something, you ask a random person on the street nowadays, like I'll say like 80 to 90% of the people know what it is or have heard of it, which is unheard of in any other nation. Yeah, let me just move on to another.
I've got just one quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
Regarding SegWit, you supported SegWit 2x, as far as I know, right? So what if like there's another like version who supports SegWit? Are you gonna support it, or are you gonna be committed to Bitcoin Cash?
SegWit for me isn't interesting from the point of view that we had 8 years of Bitcoin without SegWit, and it worked great, and it led to Bitcoin becoming this worldwide phenomenon. Maybe SegWit's fine, maybe it's not. It's certainly not urgent. So I'm not excited about it at all. What I am excited about is building a worldwide payment system and money for the entire world, which is Bitcoin Cash. And I don't think it needs SegWit to do that, to be honest.
Okay, then what's your opinion on the recent sort of Bitcoin gold? What do you think about that?
I don't know much about it, so I don't have much of an opinion. Although I had some Bitcoin core on an exchange that I was using to trade for more Bitcoin Cash, and then I noticed that they had credited me with some Bitcoin gold, which wasn't the same amount of Bitcoin core that I had on deposit. But I sold the Bitcoin gold for more Bitcoin Cash. But I don't know much about Bitcoin gold, so I don't have much of a strong opinion on it. But I'm skeptical at the moment.
You were talking a lot about like, you're known as Bitcoin Jesus because of all your evangelizing efforts. And I think something that Bitcoin Cash definitely, an edge that Bitcoin Cash definitely has over Bitcoin is the low transaction fees. And like you said, the ability to just hand someone like their own Bitcoin Cash, right? Let them install a wallet and allow them to experience it. Do you have any tips on how to turn people who otherwise might not know about Bitcoin into someone who knows something about Bitcoin? What are some evangelization tips?
Sure. The tool that I have been using for Bitcoin for my first 6 years of involvement in there is I would set everybody up that I could convince to allow me to help them with it. I'd set them up with a Bitcoin wallet, and then I would send them generally $1 in Bitcoin or 1,000 won in Bitcoin. And then they'd have a little bit, and they'd remember, oh, when I received this was $1 or 1,000 won. But then when they'd look at it a month or 2 months or 3 months later, it wasn't $1 anymore. It was $2 or $3 or $5. And when they see that happening, even the people that aren't libertarians and the people that don't care about, freeing the economic systems of the entire world so that people have control over their own money, even the people that don't care about that at all, when they see that their money doubled in the course of a couple of weeks or months, suddenly they become much more interested in it and want to start getting involved. So my advice would be to anybody that you can, set them up with a Bitcoin Cash wallet and send them $1 in Bitcoin Cash. And I used to say set them up with a Bitcoin Core wallet and send them $1 in Bitcoin Core, but it costs $20 in fees now to send them $1 in Bitcoin Core. So that's not feasible anymore. Whereas 1,000 won or $1 with a fee of less than 10 won or less than a penny, that's no problem. People can afford that, but people aren't going to do that when it costs $20 or 20,000 won to do that. So set them up with a Bitcoin Cash wallet, give them $1 in Bitcoin Cash, and then tell them to watch the price as it goes. And I think within a few weeks they'll be pretty excited about it, even if they're not the libertarian type of person that wants to free the economic systems of the entire world.
I want to talk about the Bitmain and Jianu. I mean, there's a lot of speculation and conspiracy theory regarding your relationship with Jianu. And I mean, so there are a lot. I mean, you should know it. So what is your opinion about that? What are the nature of what is the nature of your relationship with Jianu? And what do you think about him?
I think Bitmain is one of the most successful, or probably the most successful Bitcoin business ever. He provides ASICs to people all over the world. Jihan was the first person in the entire world to translate the Bitcoin white paper from English into Chinese. So all the stuff that we see happening in China in large part is thanks to Jihan for translating that into Chinese and spreading Bitcoin in China. Jihan loves Bitcoin. He's made an incredibly successful business. We should all be respectful and appreciative and basically in awe of what he's managed to accomplish in just a few short years. And it's worth noting, Jihan obviously is a big supporter of Bitcoin Cash. Jihan's educational background is in economics. He has an economics degree. And my educational background is also in economics. And it seems like the majority of the people that support Bitcoin Cash have degrees in business or economics or actually have business experience, in addition to computer science experience as well. Whereas a lot of the Bitcoin Core supporters seem to be much more focused on the computer science aspect and ignore the business and economic aspect. And I don't know if that's the case with you yourself, but I think it's worth, you need to consider both sides of that equation, because if you only have the economics right and you have the computer science wrong, Bitcoin's broken. But if you only have a bunch of neat computer scientists and you ignore the economics and business side, then you just have a fun science experiment that isn't going to change the world for the better, because nobody's going to use it. So you have to have both sides of the equation in there. And unfortunately, Bitcoin Core has been on a rampage of censoring anybody that speaks out about the economic reasons that Bitcoin has become a success and needs to keep those economic points in mind. If you post those sorts of things, they'll literally delete your posts from bitcointalk.org, from our Bitcoin or bitcoin.org.
I'm almost starting to think that depending on whether your background or your propensity is either economics or computer science, that you're going to start to align with different cryptocurrencies. But another question. So since we talked about Jihan, now let's talk about Craig Wright.
Yeah.
Do you believe Craig Wright is Satoshi?
So I don't know or care who Satoshi is. Whoever he is, wherever he is, he invented one of the most important things in the entire history of the world that's now right before our eyes, improving the lives of every single human being on the planet. So whoever Satoshi is, he deserves absolutely whatever he wants out of life. And it's pretty clear whoever he is, he wants his privacy and wants to be left alone. So whoever he is, he deserves that and then some. As far as Craig Wright himself goes, listen to the things he says. That guy is spot on when it comes to Bitcoin. He's spot on as to what makes Bitcoin a success. That guy is a genius. I had the honor of spending quite a bit of time with him face-to-face, person-to-person. Wow, I'm just amazed with the amount of stuff that he knows about and the stuff that he can learn about. And so the topics that I'm knowledgeable about myself, he's super knowledgeable about as well, and he knows, you know, he's right there with me on the topics that I consider to be very, very knowledgeable about myself. And then he's super knowledgeable about all sorts of things I know almost nothing about. And I'm not the best judge of it because I'm so weak in those areas, but other people that were present at the conversations that are stronger in those areas are there listening. And one of the examples of this is he said that you can solve the transaction malleability issue already right now, today, without SegWit or any other changes at all. And people were very skeptical, and then he explained how to do it, and they thought, oh, I never thought of it that way before. I guess that could work. And I'm pretty impressed with Craig Wright myself, and I think the ecosystem is lucky to have him.
Yeah. You also have I think your background is super interesting. I mean, the economic computer science background, obviously, but you were in this
prison background.
Yes. You were in America, and then you moved over to Japan, and now you're traveling different parts of the world. I just want to ask, this for our Korean audience, when you're living in Japan, which people like, presumably it's the most cryptocurrency friendly country in the world, is there do you see a difference between Japan and rest of the world, like some similarities and differences? And also, do you see how cryptocurrency or the landscape might be different in Japan versus Korea?
So Japan's pretty amazing, that first point. If you get in a taxi in Japan, there's little like tablets on the back of the seat in front of you that play commercials. It seems like 1 out of 5 of the commercials they play are Bitcoin commercials in the taxi. So you can't even get in a taxi in Japan without seeing Bitcoin commercials, which is pretty incredible if you think about how far Bitcoin's come. So thank you to Bitflyer, which is an exchange in Japan, for doing those commercials. But you see Bitcoin stuff all over the place in the newspaper, in the tabloids, on TV. They're talking about it. It's a really, really big deal in Japan. And to be honest, I think part of the reason is that because Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, and I've met a couple of Japanese politicians, and I didn't say anything to them, but this Japanese politician was super, super proud of Bitcoin because it was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, obviously a Japanese person. So he wanted the entire world to know what a wonderful thing has been created for the world by this Japanese person. And so, of course, I kept my mouth shut and didn't tell him that I think that Satoshi probably is not actually a Japanese person. But I think that there's a bit of nationalistic pride in Japan of Bitcoin for that point. And the people that are deep into Bitcoin realize that, you know, Satoshi Nakamoto's English was better than my own English, so he's probably not some Japanese guy living in Japan. But I wasn't going to correct the politician on that point. I was happy to let him continue to think that and make, you know, laws that are favorable to Bitcoin in Japan.
Yeah. Okay. I have let's just go with one more question. How much Bitcoin Cash do you actually hold? And no specific amounts, but we usually ask people like what percent of their holdings, like complete, like their financial portfolio is in cryptocurrency. But I think we can pretty much say with confidence that your holdings are 100% in Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash. So what's the scoop?
No, I own quite a few different altcoins. I didn't own anything other than Bitcoin core coins up until maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I became very, very afraid of the scaling roadmap that the Bitcoin core team was proposing. And I saw the writing on the wall that Bitcoin's blocks were going to become full, which would cause Bitcoin to have high fees and unreliable transactions. And when things have high fees and unreliable transactions, people are going to seek out alternatives. So it wasn't until I saw that starting to happen that I bought any altcoins at all. And the other big burning issue with Bitcoin that's taken a backseat because of the scaling debate is the privacy issues. Bitcoin is nowhere near as private as it needs to be. One of the characteristics that make money is fungibility, which means every piece of money is the same as any other piece of money. And the way you achieve that with cryptocurrencies is by having privacy or anonymity built into the cryptocurrency. And Bitcoin is really, really, really weak on that point. And the full blocks have made it even weaker because it's made it too expensive for people to use Bitcoin mixing services or other Bitcoin privacy tools because the fees are so high now. So that's another way that Bitcoin Core's full block policy has incredibly damaged Bitcoin. Not only does it make the fees high and the transactions unreliable, but it's undermined Bitcoin's fungibility or privacy level because now all these mixing services have basically had to close down because the fees are too high, or the very few that still remain, nobody wants to use them because the fees are so high, and it takes maybe hours or days to get your money back because the confirmation times are so slow. So that's another way in which Bitcoin's been incredibly damaged by this full block policy of Bitcoin Core. So when I saw these things starting to happen, I looked, okay, well, what currencies have developers that actually want to allow them to scale, and which ones actually have more privacy than Bitcoin? So I invested in Zcash, I invested in Zcoin, I invested in Monero, I invested in Dash, I invested in Ethereum. So I have a basket of cryptocurrencies at this point. The biggest one is Bitcoin Cash because I think it has the biggest network effect and it's easier to build the privacy tools on top of it now that the blocks aren't full. But it would be foolish to put all of your eggs into one cryptocurrency basket. You should hold a portfolio of cryptocurrencies. But the one I'm the most bullish on is Bitcoin Cash.
Hey, Roger, thank you. Thanks a lot for the interview. I think we have to let you go at this time. Do you have any last things you want to say to Korea before you say goodbye?
Yeah, 한국 좋습니다. 한국 미안해요. 한국 사랑해요. Next time I go to Korea, samgyeopsal 많이 먹어요. Something like that, right? And then let's all go to samgyeopsal the next time I'm in Korea. And then please go to bitcoin.com. It's all in English at this point, but download the bitcoin.com wallet. Email me at roger@bitcoin.com if you're willing to be paid in Bitcoin Cash to translate our wallet into Korean, because we definitely should have that in Korean now. So thank you all so much. 감사합니다.
Yeah, something that we're trying to do is we're trying to be as neutral as possible, and we want to hear as many sides as possible. So it'd be great not only to have you on the show, but to have other people who are from Bitcoin Cash, like whether it be developers or whether it be miners or whoever the leaders are. We'd love to have them on the show and let people hear both sides of the argument and make sure that they make their own decisions, if that's all right with you.
I'm completely on board with that. I think the more discussions that people can have, the best ideas will win out. So, which I'm sad to say that's been the exact opposite policy of Bitcoin Core. They don't support the free and open discussion of these ideas. So if you guys ever want to organize a debate as well between a Bitcoin Core supporter, count me in. I'd be more than happy to participate on that anytime.
Oh, it's gonna be super interesting.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we're willing to reach out to both sides, and because I mean, yeah, since we are. And
I'll tell you the person I would love to debate the most is Samson Mao, the Chief Strategy Officer of Blockstream. I've invited him several times. He played all sorts of games and wiggle rooms, and I told him, you tell me when and where and I will be there, but he's declined so far. But Samson, if you're watching this, I would love to have a public debate with you on these topics. I think they're very, very important for the world, and I think debating them in a serious manner is very important, much more important than just doing ad hominem attacks on Twitter.
All right.
Wow.
Well, internet. To all our fans out there, yeah, that was Roger Ver. Yeah. And once again, we're the blockchainers, Cian and
Youngwon,
coming straight from the soul heart of Korea with some of that good Korean soul and all your cryptocurrency news and blockchain related stuff. And we are focused on the fundamentals, on the technology, and we just want to talk more and learn more. And we're just documenting our process. If you guys like the video, please don't forget to hit subscribe and like, and please comment any comments are welcome. I'm sure Roger will be looking at the comments as well as many other people. So let's get this discussion rolling. So thank you once again, Roger. Thank you once again, Korea. Thank you once again, everybody who tuned in outside of Korea. So we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for coming, Roger.
Thank you, guys.